I gotta say, I'm gonna miss that intro music. I think I might get it as a ringtone. I don't know. Well, anyways, good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone coming in. I hope everyone had a great time last night. And again, we want to thank Mayor Ginther and the great city of Columbus and all of the volunteers. I've seen you all volunteers. You all are working very hard, making sure everybody has their badges. Very much appreciate it for being such wonderful hosts. This conference has worked for decades to encourage Congress to pass bipartisan infrastructure laws. And when we succeeded, we faced, unfortunately, a new reality. Working with our federal agency partners, we now have to implement the law in 5 short years. That's a monumental task, but the nation's mayors are up to the challenge. To help cities sort through all the various infrastructure projects, Bloomberg Philanthropies helped to organize a consortium of funders and organizations to assist us in our efforts. Here's what mayors have to say about the formation of the local infrastructure hub.
Infrastructure reaches all aspects of the city, from connectivity to roads, sewer, water, you really name it.
It's not just important, it's really critical.
One of the key responsibilities of city government, and it's important for us as mayors
to help prepare infrastructure throughout our country.
We've got to rebuild our infrastructure, we've got to rebuild America.
The House passed the president's $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill.
A once-in-a-generation investment that's going to create millions of jobs.
The bipartisan infrastructure bill is a huge opportunity.
There's generational, community-changing dollars
to address infrastructure projects that haven't been addressed for a long time.
Reconnecting communities, especially those that have been left behind.
The plans are in place, so the momentum is really high.
The $1 trillion package promises significant investments in every pocket of the country.
We have never seen an investment at the level that we're getting.
But with it comes a lot of complex regulations.
Navigating the complexities of rules and regulations to get access to this money can sometimes be very challenging.
Thanks to Local Infrastructure Hub, we're able to have the support we need.
so that we can really tie everything together.
To give us best practices on how to move forward.
Because not every city can have 20 people looking at every grant. Local Infrastructure Hub certainly helps with that. We appreciate that in Oklahoma City.
This infrastructure bill is so incredibly important. We started at a very low point. It is great to end today like this.
On behalf of Arlington, Texas.
On behalf of the city of Fremont.
On behalf of the city of Pensacola, I would love to thank the folks at the Local Infrastructure Hub.
It's been a game changer for Cincinnati and cities across the country.
We know that the infrastructure bill will really have a major impact.
And so I'm going to continue to push.
And that we make sure that we don't waste this historic investment to position our city for the future.
Now please welcome to the stage Jamie Lavin of Bloomberg Philanthropies, Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner, who we had a beautiful ceremony for last night, St. Louis Mayor Tashara Jones, and Allentown Mayor Matt Turk.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor Suarez. It is a pleasure to be here on behalf of Mike Bloomberg, Jim Anderson, and the entire team at Bloomberg Philanthropies. I'm excited to speak with this accomplished group of mayors. Last year, I joined you in Reno to announce a new initiative, the Local Infrastructure Hub, Bloomberg Philanthropies' latest collaboration with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. 1 year later, I'm excited to discuss the incredible progress you have been making in your communities to translate this federal funding into transformative projects that drive results. In partnership with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, thank you, Tom, and all of the conference staff for your incredible partnership, and Results for America, we've hosted 27 sessions with top federal officials, national policy experts, to go deep into the specific programs and help you understand how they work, where are the opportunities to expand your vision, and how you can maximize your chances to win. On each of these sessions, we've heard from you, the mayors leading change, and we look forward to welcoming more of the mayors in this room to elevate your successes so you all can learn from one another. These online sessions are open to all cities, big and small, to you and your teams, and cover the full range of funding areas that are included in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. And for cities with a population of under 150,000 residents, I have a specific message for you. We know that so often smaller cities feel like federal programs aren't designed for them and that it's too hard to put together a competitive application. And that's why we partnered with the National League of Cities to deliver an ongoing series of 3-month grant application boot camps to walk you through line by line specific funding programs. And registration is still open until June 7th for our latest round of boot camps that kick off later this month. They're focused on railroad programs, the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, broadband opportunities, Neighborhood Access and Equity Grant Program, which is really expansion of reconnecting communities, and the Bridge Investment Program. I encourage you to stop by our booth and register today. So far, we've had over 1,000 cities participating in hub programming, and the vast majority are with populations of under 150,000 residents. And they've been able to pull down over $300 million in funding, and we feel like we're just getting started. Lastly, I want to announce an exciting new opportunity. At this year's Bloomberg City Lab convening in Washington, D.C., we will be recognizing 100 infrastructure leaders from your communities. We encourage you to nominate an infrastructure champion today. So to get involved, go visit our website, localinfrastructure.org. Now, let's jump into this panel. I'm honored to be joined by this incredible group of mayors. As we've discussed throughout this meeting, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act are creating historic funding opportunities for cities. And we know that to take advantage of those requires prioritization, resources, and capacity. Maybe to get us started, can you each comment on how you're approaching this opportunity and organizing your teams to maximize funding around key priorities for your communities?
Thanks, Jane, and let me thank Bloomberg for what you all are doing. Let me thank the Biden administration and Congress for what they did. In the city of Houston, for example, we have 16,000 miles of streets and roads. And then there are a number of projects that we had already identified that we simply were not able to get to because of the lack of funding. And many of those projects, for example, are in communities where there's been a lack of investment, a lot of inequities, and they were missing out. But what we did even before the bipartisan infrastructure bill is that we had identified a number of major priority projects that we needed to address. We had implemented our Vision Zero plan. We had this high injury index, and we kind of overlaid it with one another. And then when the monies became available, we applied. And in August of last year, we received our first raise grant of about $21 million for a part of town that was in what we call these underserved communities that were able to connect to 2 other projects that had already started, but we didn't have the funding. So curbs and drainage projects and crosswalks and paving, cameras, and we redesigned the streets to slow down the traffic. Yeah. So that was the first one. And then the second one was the reconnecting project, the grant funding. That was in February of this year. And quite frankly, that's in one of the areas that we've identified that's highly populated, very diverse, very transit dependent. And so that will help to move that project along. And then the third one we received was in March of this year. And that was a Safe Streets, Safe Roads grant of about $29 million. And that's one of the streets that we have identified as one of the most dangerous in the city of Houston. So all of these projects we had identified, just didn't have the resources. And we're a big city. Yeah. Okay. But with the resources being available, things are really happening, and I'm very proud of that.
So great to hear. How about you, Mayor Jones? How are you organizing around this effort?
Yeah, so we're not as far down the road as Houston is, but some of the same projects that Mayor Turner has identified are some of the same priorities that we have as well. We're expanding our MetroLink or our train service to what we call the North Side, South Side line to make sure that it goes into low-income neighborhoods or neighborhoods that haven't been invested in decades. This particular line hits all of the Justice 40 requirements, and up to 20% of the people along that line don't have access to a vehicle. So it's really about connecting people to jobs. We also are applying for a RAISE grant around our new NGA facility or National Geospatial Agency, and also in the process of working with our MPO, East West Gateway, to apply for a Safer Streets plan, because we also passed a bill that put the largest investment in street infrastructure in our city, and we're on the way to our first citywide mobility and transportation study, which has never been done in the history of our city.
That's great, and I think we're going to talk about that bill in just a minute. And how about you, Mayor Turk? How have you organized your staff? You're from a smaller city.
Yeah.
How have you been able to pull together resources behind this effort?
Well, one way is by being disciplined, right? So we are a smaller city, and we're a city that is an older city. Allentown is a 260-year-old city, and some of the infrastructure feels like it's that old and hasn't seen investment in a really long time. So we don't want to treat it like we're at the buffet table and just filling up the plate. We have to be disciplined about how we make investments, and we're trying to make sure that our mayor's office is taking a strategic approach to pursuing those investments, and the local infrastructure hub has been helpful for that level of organization. So working closely with our Department of Public Works to evaluate the infrastructure challenges that are most pressing. Obviously for us, we did receive a Safe Roads and Streets for All grant. That one was critically important. We had 4 pedestrians lose their lives in traffic-related accidents in 2022. That was a critically important piece for us. Stormwater lining projects are something that we've invested in through ARPA. We want to be able to continue to make smart investments into our water, sewer, and waste and stormwater infrastructure. But rather than just jump on everything, because everything's out there and necessary, we're trying to be strategic and pursue those investments or those efforts from an equity lens as well. Allentown is a city that has been underserved, and we want to make sure that that we can get funding to the places that need it the most.
That's great to hear, and I think we heard from our DOT colleagues yesterday that the number one thing they're looking at when they evaluate applications is the project going to happen, right? They want to know that they're not going to give money and invest in a project that never gets off the ground or that stalls. And so that piece around making sure you're not going for everything that you don't have the capacity to actually implement is so important. Mayor Turner, yesterday we heard Mayor Landrieu talking about, Mayor Landrieu, Senior Advisor Landrieu. I guess he's always a mayor, right?
Once a mayor, always
exactly.
a mayor.
Once a mayor, always a mayor. Talking about visiting for Houston's successful RAISE grant. You also, as you said, were able to get a Reconnecting Communities grant and a Safe Streets Roads for All grant.
Right.
Can you just tell us what your secret sauce? Because that's incredible, and I think a lot of communities out there want to know what is. It sounds like you've approached these projects with a holistic outlook, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about how you were able to do that and tie that vision together.
Well, there's so much out there, and there's so many grants that are out there, and the question is, okay, how do you synthesize it and move on it? I put together a specialized team using some of the people from my government section that really have honed in on the bipartisan infrastructure bill. So it's a specialized team. And then we have all these different departments. So it's making sure that we don't have different departments going at, in some cases, the same thing. And so the cross-departmental strategies, but it all filters up through the specialized team. And so we make the determination who's best at taking the lead, and not everyone can take the lead. And so just like on the RAISE grant that I talked about, the city was going to move forward on it, and then Metro, my transit division, was going to move forward, and we said no. We're all going to come together as one. So Metro stood down, supported the project that the specialized team said we're going to go after, and then we said, Metro, you go after the grant dealing with like electric buses. And so we got the RAISE grant. Metro ended up getting the grant for electric buses. And then we said, let's look for projects that will be transformational. Not just some project that just for this moment, but how do we pick projects that will be transformational, that will have that equity component, factor in communities that have been underserved and under-resourced. So we have as many partners coming to the table. And what we could say to those who are evaluating this project, if you give us X, we'll combine Y, and it'll go much, much further. So the RAISE grant covers about 8 miles in this underserved area. A lot of community support, but we were already working on 2 other projects. This one connected with those two. So when it's all said and done, the project will be very transformational, and we are leveraging the raise grant with other dollars. So that's the way we're approaching it, and what we've said and what I've said to my teams. Not everybody is going to be doing your thing.
Yeah.
So let's funnel it up, and then let's work together. And then with our regional partners, we're saying the same thing. We will support you, you support us, and let's maximize our efforts so that when people are evaluating these projects, they're not just seeing a one-off, but they are seeing something that can benefit, long-term benefits, so to speak.
I think that partnership piece is so important, and we heard from the federal officials yesterday that they're looking for that. Where are you trying to leverage other funding sources and work as a regional approach and making sure it's all coordinated? Mayor Jones, as you alluded to, this year you signed a comprehensive Safer Streets bill to improve road safety in St. Louis. It's very similar to what we see in the infrastructure law seeking to achieve through Safe Streets and Roads for All. Can you discuss the development of St. Louis's road safety plan and how stakeholders were engaged throughout the process?
Yes, so just like Mayor Turk talked about, we had a lot of pedestrian deaths, actually more than previously in history. I think we had 20 in 1 year, which is a lot for St. Louis. And so we did town halls and surveys and asked the people what they wanted to see. And then that instructed our process or our progress as we started to put this grant together. So we also passed through the Board of Aldermen $50 million in ARPA funds that we set aside to make sure that we can get through the design phase and take these traffic studies that we've done over the years off a shelf that have been sitting there collecting dust, but now we have the resources to actually do something about it. So the design work is starting now, and people start to see changes on their streets that they can see and feel in 2024.
That's incredible. And just even being able to do the demonstration projects where you use light materials and just show people what it will look like until you get the concrete poured and everything can really just open people's imagination to the possibilities. Mayor Turk, Allentown received a Safe Streets and Roads for All planning grant to develop a safety action plan. Why has this been an important moment for your city, and how are you planning on sort of leveraging that into an implementation grant in the future?
Well, so Allentown, as I mentioned, is an older city. It's also a city that is a lot different. It's changed a ton. We're now a 55% Latino city. 50 years ago, we were a 0% Latino city. The city has changed, but we're built for that old city. We're built for an older time. And when we should have been planning, we were doing a lot of other things. Google it. We don't have those plans that are sitting on the shelf collecting dust. We haven't had something that we could show up and make an investment in. So while we heard President Biden talk about this being a once-in-a-generation investment, we're hopeful that it's not. We're hopeful that there's future investments, that this is a new paradigm for federal government getting dollars into localities. We talked about smaller cities and larger cities and the feeling that larger cities always got the money in the past. And I think it was true in the past. The hope is that as things are changing, that this is a new paradigm for the future. And cities like Allentown and smaller cities need to have plans so that we're ready to go to implementation. Right now, again, as I said, we weren't planning when we should have been. So we're in a position where we're going to the funding opportunities in the bipartisan infrastructure law to plan for those safer roads and streets. We're going to be using our energy efficiency and conservation block grant dollars to invest in planning for a climate future. We got EECBG dollars in 2009 and made really dumb investments because we didn't have a plan in place. So having those plans is absolutely essential, not just for later dollars as part of the bill, but in the hope that in the future we'll be able to take advantage and make smart investments that lead to that lasting and equitable recovery.
That's so great, and I'm really glad to hear you talk about planning, because that's a piece that often gets overlooked. Everyone wants the implementation money, right? And if you don't have a good plan, the implementation money is not going to do you any good, right? You're going to build something that's the wrong thing for your community, and if you haven't done that stakeholder engagement. We have about 3 minutes left, so let's do a little bit of a lightning round.
Okay.
1 minute, how are you prioritizing equity? We've heard it in all of your answers a bit, but it would just be great to hear. Justice 40 is obviously a really important part of this bill. What are you doing? How are you making sure that the benefits are really going and flowing to those communities?
Well, even for me, in Houston, even before the money became available, I identified 10 communities in the city of Houston that have been underserved and under-resourced. We had already engaged in 1.5 to 2 years of community engagement in these communities. When you overlay that with best practices, the Vision Zero plan was already in place. And what we discovered was that 6% of our streets where 6% of the fatalities and serious injuries were occurring. So we overlaid all of that in place. When the money became available, working with the community engagement, community organizations, utilizing the data, then we were able to come forth with the plan.
You know, at Bloomberg, we love the data.
Yeah.
Mayor Jones.
Well, I'm the first mayor in over 20 years to be born, raised, and still live in a primarily black neighborhood in St. Louis. And so it was pretty easy for me as I look out my front door. So I made it a part of my platform, and it's personal for me because I want to make sure that that my son grows up in a neighborhood that he can be proud of, and that other children that are growing up in North St. Louis deserve the same things that children living in primarily white neighborhoods do. So it was pretty easy to make it a priority for myself and make sure that we're taking care of people who have been neglected for decades.
If you look at the Justice 40 map, pretty much all of the city of Allentown is included. So mayors, though, know our neighborhoods a little better. We have the data, we have the life experience, and you all know, where there's actual places and neighborhoods in your city that haven't seen that investment. So we're focusing our investments and our planning on those neighborhoods that are the real local data, And I think that's one of the nice things about these dollars going direct to localities is we know where this money needs to be spent to accomplish those equity objectives.
I just want to thank you all so much for sharing your insights with everyone today. I want to say a special thank you to Mayor Turner. As you're ending your term, we at Bloomberg Philanthropies have been just so honored to have worked with you and to benefit from your wisdom and leadership. So an extra thank you to Mayor Turner. And I would just say to all of the mayors and city staff in this room, I encourage you to participate in the local infrastructure hub and to apply. Please apply for these federal funds. They're there for you to claim, and they're going to help propel your communities forward. Thank you all.
So now I get to introduce one of they call it the big three, which of course is Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. And I'm thinking there's gotta be a big four here. You know, I think Miami has to graduate into the big four. What do you guys think? Yeah? You better clap better than that. Okay, I don't care if there's 50 people in here. Okay, good. So now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce the Mayor of Los Angeles, a woman with a strong track record of public service who has emerged as a driven advocate for the diverse and dynamic city she represents. Our next speaker brings a wealth of experience and a deep understanding of the unique challenges and opportunities that Los Angeles faces. She has demonstrated that she intends to act with bold and focused intensity to serve all who live in her great city. And she has made clear that she intends to be a committed and active member of our organization. Please join me in welcoming Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. I am very, very, very excited to be here with you today, and I want to thank Mayor Suarez for his introduction and his leadership of this organization, and of course, Mayor Ginther for welcoming us all here in Columbus, and our incoming president, President Shivi. I will tell you that this is my second time at the conference. The first time was in January, and I think I had been mayor for maybe 2 weeks. So now I'm reaching my 6-month anniversary, and I have to say that being in this organization as a new member, it has been such a welcoming experience. It is also incredible, the power that is in this room, and I can see how this organization can influence the national debate, how this organization can move state and national policy. And having served in the State House and also in Congress, when I was trying to make my decision as to whether or not to run for mayor, many members of Congress, of course, had served as mayors. And every single one of them came up to me and told me that the best job they ever had in public service was serving as mayor. And so when I think of the power of this organization going to our various state houses and going to the halls of Congress to remind those Congress members and those representatives in the state houses that many of them served as mayors before. So when you're passing legislation or dealing with your budgets, don't forget where you came from. So I am honored to join and to participate, and I want to join the fight for our cities. As a matter of fact, it was the fight for my own city that led me to make the decision to leave Congress and to run for mayor of Los Angeles, because Los Angeles was and is facing an incredible humanitarian crisis. And frankly, I felt like what was going on in LA, I was watching the rerun of a very bad movie, the type of movie that gives you nightmares. Watching problems in our cities, watching it develop into a humanitarian crisis. In Los Angeles, if you look at Los Angeles County, we have 60,000 people who are essentially living in tents all over the place, to the point where small cities, our encampments, have developed. Now, we have faced people being unhoused for many, many years, in fact, decades. But now the problem has grown to such a massive extent that you see tents everywhere. I remember in the 1990s, when homelessness was really beginning to develop as an issue, it was really only in certain neighborhoods. It was in the inner city, it was on the skid rows, but now it has reached the proportion in our city alone, not just the county. We have over 40,000 people living in tent cities around Los Angeles. What worried me is that when people feel, when voters feel like you have a problem that's intractable, that you can't see a way out of it, you become demoralized, you become angry. And what is frightening to me is that that is when the worst policy decisions are made. So the nightmare and the bad movie I'm referring to is the movie from the 1990s, when we were experiencing a rise in violence, gang violence. Crack cocaine was an epidemic in inner cities around the country. And unfortunately, what policymakers did was they just responded to the anger and the demoralization and passed laws that essentially criminalized what I believed was a health issue, a social issue, an economic issue. It was certainly an issue of crime as well, but our only solution led in that direction. What was happening in Los Angeles was the same thing. Voters had actually taxed themselves twice to deal with the problem of homelessness. And after taxing ourselves twice, the problem doubled. It went from 14,000 to 30,000, and now to close to 50,000. We're waiting for our point-in-time count. Voters were frustrated. They didn't believe they were going to be able to solve the problem, so they had reached the point where they just wanted the problem to go away. And what does that lead to? That leads to criminalizing a problem that is a health problem, a social problem, and an economic problem. That's what led me to make the decision to say I can't sit through a rerun of this bad movie again. We have to look at who are the individuals that are in those tents, and I know we're all experiencing this. Fortunately, most of you are not experiencing it to the magnitude that we are in Los Angeles, but everybody is experiencing it on some level. And what I hope to gain from being a part of this organization is to make sure that no city reaches the scale that has happened in the Los Angeles area, and that we make a decision as a nation. This is the richest country in the history of the world. How could we possibly have people living in tents? It was one thing when that happened in the 1930s, when there was a massive depression. This is not a depression that we're going through now. Our economy goes up and down, but we're certainly doing very well as an economy in the nation. The California economy is the fourth largest economy in the world. So how could we have, as a state, over 100,000 people living outside? But I think two things have happened. Number one, housing has become unaffordable in so many cities, and certainly in Los Angeles. But number two, over the years, we have watched the shredding of our social safety net. So if you look at the people in the tents, the demoralization in our city reached a point where people felt that everybody in those tents were strung out on meth and they wanted to be there. Well, actually, you have a variety of people. You have thousands of children who are in those tents, former foster youth who we essentially put out on the street when they're 18 or 21. You have people that were formerly incarcerated and because of laws that were passed long ago are not allowed to rent, because who is going to rent to somebody who is a past felon? You have people who are veterans. You have people suffering from chronic illnesses, including substance abuse and mental health, but not only substance abuse and mental health. So what I did after I was elected on my first day, I didn't go to City Hall. I went to our Emergency Operations Center. I declared a state of emergency, put Los Angeles in a state of emergency, which gave me additional powers as mayor. But I said that the number one objective is to get people off the streets, and off the streets immediately, because that's how people, whether you are housed or unhoused, experience homelessness. I wrote an executive directive to expedite the building, but I also wrote an executive directive calling for a program that we call Inside Safe, where we send outreach workers, many of whom had been formerly unhoused, to talk to the individuals in the tents and to move them off the streets and into housing. We've rented motel rooms. Something that we learned during the pandemic is that motel owners were willing to rent their spaces because nobody was using them, and I'm sure in many, if not most of your cities, you did the same thing with the federal funding for Project Home Key and Project Room Key. So taking that lesson from the pandemic, we moved people off the streets, and we dispelled the myth in my first 6 months that people don't want to leave the streets. People have been leaving the streets willingly. It's kind of funny, when you go to an encampment, which is a small city, you see a collection of tents. There might be 5 people there, there might be 20 people there. You might have 5 people who say, I'm not going anywhere. But then 3 days later, when the bus comes to move people out, those 5 people are like, can I get on the bus? And now what we're finding is when we go to the encampments, unhoused people are calling other unhoused people, and where we might have planned to move 20, there's now 30 people there. So we are finding that people are willing to get off the streets. But we have to look at our national policies, because right now the policy of HUD is housing first, and I think all of us support that. What I would say is housing and services first. If you put people in housing without addressing why they were unhoused to begin with, you are not going to succeed, especially when it comes to substance abuse and mental health. Well, in substance abuse, the pendulum has swung very far. I don't know about in your cities, but in Los Angeles, it's swung to harm reduction. And it's not that I'm against harm reduction, but somewhere we have lost the concept of drug treatment. And unfortunately, with federal restrictions, you can only have drug treatment for 90 days. And so, looking at these issues, I will say that this problem is absolutely a solvable problem, but we have to come together and we have to figure out how we get people off the streets, reestablish our safety net, and that requires pushing on the state and the federal level, and then making sure that we are able to build the permanent housing, that our neighbors don't adhere to not in my neighborhood, but understand that we have to build housing for all. I am very, very honored to be a part of this organization. I look so forward to working with everyone here because I know these problems are solvable, but it's going to take the power of an organization like the U.S. Conference of Mayors to come together so that our state and our federal legislators say we have to examine the policies of the past and move to the future. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Mayor Bass. In Miami, we like to say that we want to take care of the least, the last, and the lost. Homelessness is a scourge in our country, and obviously we believe, as any city is defined by what they do for the least of their brothers and sisters and those who are in crisis. We have 608 homeless in the city of Miami as a result of our last census, and we put out a plan called Functional Zero. We want to be one of the first major urban cities in America to reach functional zero homeless, to have zero homeless, and we think that is what defines us as a compassionate, loving city that takes care of everyone. Now let's welcome our partners, Mars Pet Care, for an important discussion on strategies for keeping families and their pets together during difficult times. By the way, we don't always plan all these transitions, going from very serious topic like homelessness. That's also a serious topic, pets, okay? Pets are a critical component to helping people deal with stress and improving mental health and physical health, which is also true. I love that. I love that correlation and that connection. Please welcome Lisa Campbell, Vice President of Corporate Affairs with Mars Pet Care, and Spokane Mayor Nadine Woodard, and Houston Mayor, we got Sylvester back in the house. Turner, we're trying to put you to work, big dog. We're trying to put you to work a lot. Come on out.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you both for being here today. Thank you, Mayor Suarez. I'm Lisa Campbell, Vice President of Corporate Affairs at Mars Pet Care, and I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today because as mayors, you all have the opportunity to support policies and programs that help keep people and pets together. In a recent survey, twice the amount of pet parents said that they were likely to have improvements in mental and physical well-being versus non-pet parents. From companionship to a sense of purpose to an exercise buddy, pets make a huge impact in our communities and the overall well-being. And that's why Mars Pet Care and our Better Cities for Pets program supports cities in their efforts through grants, resources, toolkits, and we shine a spotlight on those who are leading the way. And speaking of that, I have a couple of mayors here with me who are definitely leading the way. And I'm excited for you all to hear about the innovative programs that they have. We were thrilled to give one of our 2022 Better Cities for Pets grants to Houston to help expand the reach of their Healthy Pets, Healthy Streets initiative to more pet parents in underserved areas. And in Spokane, a Better Cities for Pets grant is helping support a pet expert liaison in their human homeless shelter. So with that, I'd love to start. Maybe Mayor Turner, you can tell us a little bit about Healthy Pets, Healthy Streets.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for the grant. Let me just say, like in the city of Houston, we have a major problem with too many stray animals on our streets. And especially coming from areas and communities where people are already overburdened. And what we found is during COVID, the problem was exacerbated, okay? So spay and neutering was very much important. Our public supported shelter, for example, we are obligated to take every animal pet that comes. We cannot turn anyone away. Regardless of their condition, we have to take everyone. And it's a free program for spay and neutering. You know, it doesn't cost people anything. But what we're finding is that there were still a lot of families and people who didn't know, didn't have the necessary information. So we really needed to beef up our marketing and outreach initiatives, and that's where Mars stepped in. And so we are utilizing the grant funding to reach out into all of these communities and to let them know what's available that is free. For example, bark that we have, we accept all animals. Then we let people, and then we're working very closely with our foster and rescue partners to let them know what's available and to let them know that we need them. Because in 2022, the number of foster rescue partners in the city of Houston, for example, dropped by about 40%.
Wow.
So we're now needing to reach out to get them back.
That's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And Mayor Woodward, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the program that you're using for your grant.
Our program is called Keeping Pets with Their People. And we've moved very, very quickly on this initiative. So I learned about the Better City for Pets program back in January of 2022 at the annual Mayor's Conference in DC. We became a Better City for Pets certified city in just July, so 7 months later. We received the $20,000 grant to stand up a program in one of our human shelters, as you mentioned, Lisa, so that we could keep people with their pets. And we knew that that was a barrier for people accessing shelters coming in from the outside. We opened in September of last year our biggest human shelter, a city-operated shelter, where we see on any given night more than 300 individuals come in from off the street, off of sidewalks, out of underpasses, and we wanted to make sure that we could keep their pets with them so that they would access. It's also wraparound services, so we offer mental health, substance abuse. We even get them IDs, and now we're going to have a virtual court so that they can resolve some of the issues with the criminal justice system that's keeping them from moving forward. But we got a liaison to work in our human shelter, so we work with a nonprofit called Spokanimal, and they matched the grant, so $20,000 was matched with another $20,000 to fund a liaison who works in that shelter to offer services such as vaccinations. We chip animals, we refer for spay and neuter, and we just teach people who are coming off the streets how to be a responsible pet owner so that as they move through the system, they can keep those animals with them and then get into permanent housing. So it's been very, very successful as a pilot right now. We hope to get the funding to continue it.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And maybe I'll go ahead and stick with you, Mayor Woodward. As you mentioned, you're one of our newer certified cities, which we are very grateful to have you as part of the team. And you've been with us for almost a year now. What do you think is the #1 benefit for cities when they embrace being pet friendly?
We are a gathering place for our region. So the city of Spokane is between Seattle and Minneapolis. We're the largest city on the north end of the country. I-90 connects those two very large cities, but we're smack in the middle. So we're a gathering place for our region where people come for arts and entertainment and retail and dining. And so when we became a Better City for Pets, we really did a push with our businesses to be pet friendly. And we have so many of them now who are. So when people come to gather and visit, they can support businesses that support their pets. And I think that makes our downtown more thriving, more vibrant. And we have one business in particular. It's a restaurant called Bark Rescue Pub. And you can mingle with pets. They have a shelter in the basement. You can go visit the animals. You can bring them upstairs to the restaurant, to the outside patio, get to know the pet as you're dining. And in the last 2.5 years, that restaurant has adopted 1,000 animals.
Wow.
They work closely with Humane Society, and it's absolutely incredible. So if we can encourage more of those kinds of partnerships, we'll have an even healthier city, happy residents, and happy pets too.
That's
I like
amazing.
that.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to steal that.
You can steal it anytime you want. Well, let me just say something about how much I am grateful for Mayor Turner, because we're stealing something from him. So I took a contingency group of 12 people to the city of Houston, because the city of Houston is really moving the needle on addressing homelessness. And so we are modeling their program, customizing it for Spokane, but we are setting up a regional homeless authority so that we can be more efficient and effective in how we spend our dollars, disperse resources, and address the issue of homelessness. So thank you. Thank you for being a leader and a model for cities across the country.
And if I can, and at the same time, and listening to what you're saying, Mayor, we look at homelessness, and often we talk about people. But when it comes to homelessness, it also affects our pets and our animals. And we have too many that are homeless on our streets. And so the spay, the neutering, providing families with the necessary resources. People are so overburdened, and oftentimes they may not have the medicine that they need or can't afford it. They may not have the food that they need. So we provide the pantries, for them, all of the essential things that they need so that they can hold on to their family members so that they don't feel as though they have to put them out. And that's one of the reasons why in the publicly supported shelter, by law, we cannot, city, turn anybody away. We take them in, we find ways to meet their needs. It's difficult at times because for many of the private shelters, they can say, we're full, we're max, no more. Right. Or depending on the temperament of that pet, they may say, no, we can't do that. But we take them all in. It's very difficult, and that's why any financial support that we can get really helps us to deal in a holistic way with all of the family members, and that includes the pets.
Yes, it's so important, and we're so happy to be able to help support those programs. And it's great to hear how the work that you're doing on the human side and the pet side and how that all comes together for the whole family.
Well, and so for so many of our unhoused, their pet is the only companion they have in their life, their only support system. They have been separated from everything that they know, whether it's their family, their job, their social network system, anything like that. And so you take away that pet, they're not going to get the help that they really need to move on in their journey as they exit homelessness. So that becomes such an important thing for them, and to be able to keep them together so that they can move out of homelessness is really important.
Yes, absolutely agree. And Mayor Turner, Houston has been one of our longtime certified cities.
Yes.
You have been a grant recipient, and you also have 2 airports that are certified in Houston. So you're like one of our role models here. So we'd just love to hear a little bit more from you on how you think this program affects your residents and your tourists.
Well, let me just say, the 2 international airports we have, one is 4-star, and the other one is a 5-star. The only 5-star airport, I would say, on the North American continent, one of 16 in the world. Wow. And I think what adds to that, what helps, is the fact that they are pet-friendly airports. We welcome people to come with their pets. When it comes to shuttles and transportations and the service animals, you are welcome. There are indoor and outdoor facilities for the families and their pets. Many of these vendors, the concessions, for example, provide items for pets. We've also partnered with a hospital very, very close. So if by chance there are any incidents or accidents, that is made available. So we try to make it as friendly as possible. The signage, all of those things we do to say, look, this is a pet-friendly environment. Because not only are you traveling, but you're traveling in many cases with your family members. So we cater to the entire family. And then I think it helps to, when you're known as the energy capital of the world, we want to be the softer touch. We are family friendly. So we've created that environment, and quite frankly, for those individuals who are rating our airports, they put a big plus by that.
That's great. Yeah. I'm going to steal that idea.
So what do you guys think is next in pet-friendly in your cities?
Well, I think for the city of Spokane, since we're so new, it's really getting more businesses on board our airport in a better way than we're serving families with pets right now. But I don't think that's a hard sell at all. Coming out of the pandemic, a lot of people adopted pets during the pandemic. Yes. And so I know some of them did end up going, unfortunately, back to the shelters when people went back to work, but there's still so many people working a hybrid remote model that we need to be able to support those families now with pets. I, myself, my family adopted a rescue during the pandemic. And so I take my dog to work. I take him to the city hall at least one day a week. And we were looking at what we could do to encourage that with some of our employees as we're trying our best to retain employees. And we're looking at more ways that we can make it easier for them to come back into the office. So it's great. And I was just going to tell you, I've got a huge dog. I didn't even know this breed existed. It's an Irish Wolfhound / doodle, so it's a wolfadoodle. He's big, but he's like the ambassador of the mayor's office. He escorts people that come into my office and escorts people out the door, and he brings this sense of calmness to sometimes the craziness of city government, right?
Well, I need a few of those at our community session so that they can escort them right on out.
Well, we are big believers in pets at work.
There are some people that need to go. I prefer the pets sometimes than the people.
We all feel that way sometimes, I think. I think it's true. I think we've actually done some surveys where people prefer their pets as their Valentine over others who you might have guessed. But we are big believers in pets at work. As you might guess, at Mars Pet Care, we have a very pet-friendly office. I'm able to bring my dog Peanut in with me. We have a doggy daycare, and then we also have tools and resources on our site. So as cities are looking to help promote within businesses in their cities, we have some of those resources available online.
That's great.
If I can, we need, in the city of Houston, we're looking for veterinarians. We just can't get enough. We're trying to partner with some of our colleges and universities in the region. Spay and neutering is a huge, huge issue for us. And so we're working with many of our local clinics in that case, but that's big. When it comes to foster and rescue partners, we need more. And so we want to encourage people to come in and join us. We try to design a system, for example, where people are looking for information. You can get information on all of the pets that we have at BARC, or if you just want to know information on a particular breed, or if you're interested, for example, in adopting or rescuing animals with medical problems, whatever it may be, the age, you can get that sort of information. You want to get to the point where when you're taking animals in, regardless of the condition, you don't want to euthanize any animal. You don't want to do that at all. But the lack of resources limit, in some cases, what you do. And that's why I want to give a great deal of credit to Mars Pet. For the grants make a difference. I don't care how small or how big your city is. The needs will always outweigh your resources. So anytime you can get support, it works. And so what we're finding is that whether animals, pets are in shelters, or whether or not people are traveling with them to the airports, you want to say, number one, we embrace them, and we embrace the family, and we want people to feel good when they come into the city.
Amazing. Thank you. And thank you so much, Mayor Turner, Mayor Woodward. Thank you for all that you're doing to make your cities pet-friendly. And our purpose at Mars Pet Care is a better world for pets. And we're so incredibly grateful for those of you who are helping us to achieve that purpose. And we're thrilled to be offering our grant program again this year. Our grant program is live right now, and it goes through August 11th. So you can take a look at bettercitiesforpets.com and bring some innovative ideas like we've heard about here today. And if you haven't, please stop by and see us in the exhibit hall. We are the ones with the dogs, so if you need a moment away from your friends and with the dogs, we're here for you. So we'd love for you to stop by. So thank you, Mayor Woodward, and very special thank you to you, Mayor Turner. I appreciate all you've done and all of your leadership.
Thank you.
And thank you to the U.S. Conference of Mayors.
Thank you for that. It's now my pleasure to introduce a special guest who has represented the 3rd District of Ohio and the Columbus region since 2013. She serves on the House Financial Services Committee and is ranking member of the Subcommittee on National Security, Illicit Finance, and International Financial Institutions. A strong advocate for women's empowerment and voting rights for all Americans, She is a relentless leader for civil rights in our nation. A friend of American cities, please welcome Congresswoman, Joyce Beatty.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Mayor Suarez. Well, every good thing has to come to an end. And I am so glad that you were here, not only in our amazing city of Columbus, Ohio, but with your second vice president and my mayor, Mayor Andrew Ginther. You've had a full week, but let me just say in my thank you for spending a lot of money in my district. I had the unique opportunity to speak with many of you on Thursday at the mayor's event. I had again the opportunity on Friday for many of you to be in the heart of the inner city at the King Arts Complex, again in my district. And then we hosted you at rooftops on this very street, at restaurants throughout, and then in this room where you discussed things that will make a difference in cities across America. I have the unique opportunity of serving in the United States Congress, and it has been an amazing decade of service for me. But one of the things that helps make it so important during these unprecedented times is that we get to deliver in Washington, D.C., and send it back across these United States to great mayors. Mayors like Andrew Ginther, mayors like the mayors you have had here today and on this stage. You know this because earlier in your conference, you talked about all of the things that we have done. From the bipartisan infrastructure bill. Well, let me give you a little inside tidbit on that, since you all brought it up earlier, how amazing the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill was and what it has done in our communities, not only for the traditional streets and roads and railways and bridges, but for the first time, we were able to put broadband in the infrastructure bill, which was a big deal. But like in your cities, sometimes there's a bump in the road. And when we had the bump in the road, they needed someone to go in and negotiate that we could make sure that this bipartisan bill passed. I was chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and I had the unique opportunity to sit with members of Congress and negotiate the deal that got it from the Senate to the House, and yes, to the President of the United States to sign it. And let me just tell you why I knew it was so important. Because I have a mayor that meets with me as the Congresswoman for this district. So I say to you what you have when you go back home, have a great partnership, because that's what it's about. When we were faced with our global pandemic of COVID-19, it was those dollars from the federal level that we sent back to you because you spoke to us. You told us about your needs. For the first time in decades, we have community project monies. Democrats and Republicans benefit in our communities when there are dollars to sustain a program, whether it's for the homeless, whether it's for foster care, and now, as I just witnessed in the last panel, whether it's for making a partnership between pets and people for mental health. All of these things are so important for us to share and talk about. So I say to you as a member of the United States Congress, when I go back to Washington tomorrow, I will be telling the stories about what I witnessed here and heard from so many great mayors. It doesn't matter if you're a big city mayor, like my good friend, Mayor Bass, or my good friend, Mayor Turner or Dickens, and the list goes on. But it's important, no matter what your city, no matter where you live, we have to always make sure that we put people over politics. And that's what this amazing organization has done. When I read about the things that you've done, whether it's under a Republican or a Democrat leader leading the U.S. Conference of Mayors, this is a message that we should take back to the United States Congress. Because when we work together and we come together, we are all the better in this nation and certainly in the cities where people want to live and work and thrive. Right here in Columbus, Ohio, we are very fortunate because our last mayor was very active in the United States Conference of Mayors. Mayor Michael Coleman served for 16 years. But when Michael was getting ready to end his term, he tapped a younger president of city council, and that's your second vice president, Mayor Andy Ginther. And he said to Andy, I want you to be engaged in the U.S. Conference of Mayors because that's where you will experience real leadership. That's where you will learn about all of the issues and initiatives that you will bring back to this great city of Columbus. So as I leave, I'm always reminded of the words that Nelson Mandela said. Nelson Mandela said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." Well, let me just say to you, mayors of cities across this nation, thank you for getting it done. Thank you for putting people over politics. And thank you for always finishing the job to make our communities a much better place. And when you do that, the commitment I make to you this morning is that I will continue to fight to make sure that when we're in Washington and we're talking about all of the funding we need to maintain and vote on, I will remind people that it's not just about our vote there. It's about what we do and what we send back home. Because after all, your constituents are my constituent, and you are my constituent. Thank you so much for being in the 3rd Congressional District. Thank you for having an amazing conference. Thank you for spending a lot of money right here because the bed tax and some of the taxes go right back in our community to the arts, to social services, to mental health. And those are the things that you fight for as mayors of the cities across America. And I always end by saying thank you. And just in case you didn't know or remember, I am Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, and I approve this message. God bless you, have safe travels, and continue to do the people's work. Thank you.
It always seems impossible until it's done. Thank you, Congresswoman Beatty. I want to make 2 announcements. First, for member mayors planning to take part in our business session tomorrow morning, you need to pick up your voting credentials at the conference registration desk. Second, the Building Resilience in Your Sustainability Plans Best Practice Forum that begins at 11:45 today has been moved to the Kojo Kamau A room on the 4th floor. This session has concluded. Thank you all for being here with us. There are a number of important messages or meetings that follow as listed in your agenda and on our app. We stand adjourned. Thank you.